Cool. Meanwhile, Nipun is coming back. So today the topic is product as a community. Community as a product. I'm sorry. I'm really excited, so I'm getting nervous for that. So the topic is community as a product. Reason why this topic, because I've been to a lot of community meetups in Mumbai recently. Met Nipun and Vineet roughly a week or two back, and this is something which comes up every day. Hey, this platform or this community can serve as a product, or the product is a community centric product. So I thought of doing a series of sessions around this. So some are going to be online, some are going to be offline, and eventually recording blogs, uh, probably podcasts, recorded podcasts for the sessions would be available. So that's the normal plan. And hence we have two experts here, Nipun Goyal and Michael Grayson. So you guys have already seen the poster, these guys have already introduced, so we are not going to spend more time on the introductions. You can just connect with them on LinkedIn. And guys, it would be great if you can share somewhere we can connect with each other. That would be really great. So Nipun, Michael, if you can take like 2 minutes and share some more details about your background, so everyone has an understanding where you're coming from, what's your thought process. So I guess, Michael, you can go first. You're next to me on the screen.
Sure. So, as I said very briefly in my 15 seconds, I've been in the community space for these last seven or so years. I started out originally in gaming communities and managing gaming communities. And one of the really interesting things about gaming communities is that they were not first to market in terms of community, but they're very, very engaged and early. A lot of the gaming communities you see are doing stuff that when you start working in tech or in finance or something, people are catching up in a lot of ways. So I've been very interested to bring a lot of that over into a more technical area and try and work on enabling that. The other thing you see in gaming is an incredible passion from users, the kind of passion that in almost any other sector you spend your entire career trying to replicate and get in. So it's been very interesting to try and manage that switch from one to the other. To add one thing to that, though, before any of you think you must immediately all start working in gaming community management, you have to remember that while many of your users are passionate, many of them are also children, which is not great when it comes to moderation, is I think as far as I need go on that particular point. But more recently, working in a AI products-driven community and attempting to run that community as a product itself. And as Nipun was saying in his email earlier in the week, we're going to try and keep those two things distinct. We're going to talk about community as product and product-led communities as two different things, but hopefully I'm sure I'll mix them up a few times, but hopefully I'll be able to keep it fairly straight for you all. The thing that I have been focused on a lot recently is community as product in terms of the user experience and the way in which we choose to design our communities. There are, to me, essentially two main pillars when it comes to what I've been focused on in community design recently. And one of them is the active stuff, and one of them is the programmatic stuff. So the active stuff is running events. The active stuff is directly engaging with your users, how you handle your moderation, how you handle your engagement, how you handle your interaction, and things like that. And that's all excellent and very important. And there are various bits of that you can productize and run in that way. But the other side is just how your community exists and how you design it and how you build it, and the impact that you can have on all users based on how you design something, how you lay something out, how you have some particular user flow exist. These are the things I think where you can have incredibly scaled impact, because it's fantastic to have a one-to-one connection with someone on the community, or to have a really good blog or something like that. These are brilliant, very, very valuable things to do. But the only way you can go to the next level with a lot of that, I think, is when you have the whole community design such that it's going to be encouraging that kind of thing coming from your users. Because at the end of the day, we can do as much content creation and as much event hosting as we like. We will never be able to scale as effectively as if we can have our users doing it, and our users who are creating that engagement. And so creating the space for them to be the drivers of it is the kind of community product that I've been focusing on trying to build recently. And that was more than 2 minutes. I mean without the timer running, it's just, I don't stay to it.
Anuj, you're on mute.
Nipun, like you can go ahead, and I hope you
Yeah,
can
sure.
take 4 minutes.
Yeah, sure. So, hi guys, I'm Nipun. I'm the founder and CEO of LikeMinds, which is SDK and API which helps product first brands to launch community as a product within their existing app or website. So, like we work with a lot of brands to first, of course, like we discussed, like Michael said, understand what is their community architecture that they've designed. We also help them in that process because we feel it's a very early science. Like we're also figuring it out, to be honest. But we try to educate a lot on, having the need of designing a community experience for all types of users, new users, users who are, let's say, power users. So it's very, very important to think of journeys. And we help them, but more importantly, we are fundamentally a tech company where we once they've designed the architecture, we have chat APIs, feed APIs, which we enable in their existing products, and we also use like we provide custom APIs, custom UIs for clients so that they can go live without their sort of effort from the internal team. I also run this community of Community Hood, which has been, so far very event heavy, where we sort of almost every alternate week do an event on these topics. I really feel that the industry is very early, at least in this part of the world. We are all getting a lot of tools being built, but someone needs to work on education of tools. Someone needs to work on what needs to be learned. And like my background is basically I built a community platform for doctors before this. So that was my previous venture called Curofy. We had about 50% of Indian doctors using it, majorly to discuss patient cases with each other. So from my own journey, like I know how sort of the product generally evolves when you build community as a product. So when the community size is, let's say, 100 or 500, the community product would look very different than what when the community size is, for example, a 500,000, what we had at Curofy, right? So I feel it's an evolving science and evolving design and evolving engineering that requires to be done to be able to create a successful community as a product. And yeah, with LikeMinds, I'm trying to sort of democratize engineering layer as well as the knowledge layer from what I learned at Curofy. And yeah, like I sold Curofy to a US healthcare enterprise in 2019. I was part of Forbes India 30 under 30 in 2018. And Anuj asked me to mention this, so that's why I'm mentioning it. Yes, I'm also an active angel investor in India. I have done about 25 investments, and a lot of my learnings have also come from not just my own experience at Curofy, but when I talk to these founders, all of them want to do something with community. Nobody knows what to do, how to do. And with LikeMinds and Community Hood, I'm trying to create that ecosystem, hopefully not just in India, globally as well.
Yes, so he always forgets to mention about Forbes 30 under 30, so that's why I wanted to mention specifically. So, coming back to the session, you guys are the experts. So, I'm gonna start the conversation with a very basic, small question. Then it's up to you how you want to take the conversation forward. Guys, if you have any question, you can drop it in the chat. We'll pick it as we are going ahead with the discussion. So, that won't break the flow of our expert speakers here. So, starting with the basic question, that people are here from different brands and building brand community. Most of them I know. So, how to decide whether the community which you are building is it a product centric community, or it's vice versa? Because sometimes we feel that product is being running and it's up because of a community, because we are bringing users, we are bringing feedbacks. The product roadmap is designed on the basis of the feedback received from the community, and sometimes it's the other way also. So how should we decide, because this impact when you want to pitch community to your senior stakeholders. Convincing people who don't understand community about community is very complicated, and I used to face it the last couple of months, but I'm fine now. So how to decide on this, and then probably you can take the conversation forward on the upcoming roles. Like why there's a need of role called community product manager, community marketing manager. Why roles like hybrid roles like these are coming into market. So anyone, Nipun, Michael, you can go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Let me just rephrase the question. I think there are two questions. One is how do you sort of pitch it? Let's say you're running a product company. How do you pitch that? I now want to build a community around the product, and like, should it be a community of product or community of interest or community of practice, right? Like, that's one part. And I think there was one other part which was sorry, I forgot, Anuj. What was the last line that you said?
The need slash the upcoming hybrid community roles, community product manager,
Rules,
community.
right? So, what rules should we sort of think of? So, on the first part, my take is, you really need to identify certain problems that your users are facing or your members are facing. Like when you are a product company, maybe your users are facing, right? And whether certain other users, and it doesn't need to be every user, like let's say there are certain power users in your community, or certain experts in your community, whether those other users in the community value, can they solve a real problem for your existing users? So it starts from there, like any product community as a product should also start from identification of real user problems. I think pitching community as a product, as a solution for those problems comes second, where that, let's say, these stakeholders are identified, they will add value to certain stakeholders, and then you define rules on it. Who should be able to create, let's say, a post? Who should be able to create a comment? Who should be able to initiate a group chat, or who should be running any campaigns? You should think of what are the different community programs you can run for your users. And I think once you've done that, you should potentially test it out in whatever way you can. Maybe, like for Indian audience, WhatsApp is a fantastic tool to test something out very quickly. Maybe Slack, depending on your audience. Test it out, validate it like you would build any product, like identification of problem, figuring out a solution, validating the solution, and then build it out. So that's what I would recommend. Once you've validated the solution, you then have certain data to present to the management that, hey, this is what we've seen, this is what works, these are some of the problems which we validated, this is a rough solution that we validated, and hey, it's time to invest for, let's say, at least next 1 year, 2 year. I very strongly believe that if you don't have a buy-in for minimum 1 year, your community as a product will fail. Like, then you are leaving it for luck. If you take a buy-in for 3 months, 6 months, then you're leaving it for luck, and you don't want to do that, because community is a heavy investment. It is generally not a like reversible decision in short term. So that's what we advise our clients. On the second question, on the roles, I don't think we are at that stage in the industry. We should think of titles and roles. David recently wrote a very beautiful newsletter on this. I feel it's just what are the job to be done. For any product like we build, just think of job to be done, and figure out who will be the right person for job to, like, those jobs to be actually done.
I think to start with the second point, I think I think I agree that there's not necessarily a need to have very particular titles or very particular roles within it, but I think we can tie the two questions together, because one of the main things you need to be deciding if you're trying to set up a community of products or a community of insight or something like that is if you're trying to make it centered around the product, and you're trying to make the main focus of the community around conversations on this one particular product and things like that, you basically have different levels that you can aspire to, I think. And the most basic one is going to be around support. So if you want to hit the base level of success, your community is going to need to be a place where users come in and they solve their support needs, either by talking to each other or by finding things that were asked earlier. But if you want to take it to the next level and make the community, your product really influenced by your community, that's where things start getting significantly harder. And I think that's where some roles like, whatever we want to title it, but a role like a community product manager or but apart from the role, having a really good connection between the product team and the community team becomes vital. Because if you can get, there is a kind of a perfect scenario where you can get a community which is so ingrained in your product process that when there are suggestions made on the community, not only are they internalized by the product team, not only are they going to become things that that might well influence the product, but the community knows that and feels that and lives that. And that's the second part of that, I think, is almost more difficult, because having your product team listening to your community is fairly easy in some ways. It can be very difficult, but if the product team wants to do it, it's not very difficult. They are essentially, at the end of the day, reading, which is not too difficult. Reading is a lot easier than talking and sharing, and having the commitment from the product team to come back and say, you suggested this, we've gone through and we've implemented this bit, and these conversations being spread over such a long period of time. Very much all depend on the product, but let's say your product has a kind of 3-monthly main update cadence. We're assuming, I'm speaking from my experience, but if we're thinking about something like a tech product here that's being updated, you might have a major update every 3 months, something like that. That means that you have to create a community with people who trust that when they're saying something in Q1, they're going to wait until Q2 to actually get any feedback, get any actual response in the changing of the product. And I think when you have those internal roles that tie together the product team and the community team, so you have someone who's it doesn't have to be their whole job, but someone whose responsibility is trying to bridge that divide and making sure that you can have those conversations coming back to the community. Because it's very easy, as I'll say it again because I think it's worth saying twice, but it's very easy to have that stuff come out of the community. It's very difficult to put it back, especially because in any product scenario, you're going to have realistically dozens, hopefully less, but these things tend to multiply beyond any control. You're going to have dozens of different ways feedback is coming into the product. You're going to have loads of different ways that's coming in, and then the product team wants to work on making the best product they can. And they often lose track of the fact that one of the ways you can make the product excellent is by having that feedback coming back down the line. And that's one of the areas where I think product communities can be really excellent, because a lot of that you can automate. You can have ideation spaces which let you run a lot of that programmatically. So it's not people having to, email out to the 6 different clients that had this particular request. You can have, one item, one ticket, one post where you can then push that back to all of them, which can be good. I feel like I've strayed slightly from the question, but that's that's what I think about when I hear the community of products. The other thing that Nipun was saying that I wanted to pick up on is around how you decide what kind of community you want to build. And he has it completely right that what matters is the pre-existing pain point. You have to be finding what's the need. So you can decide, I want to have a product-focused community, which is going to be this amazing product, and it's going to have XYZ features. But all of that is that can look good, and you can come up with KPIs that make that seem extremely successful. But if the stakeholders and the purse holders who are going to be deciding whether or not they give you the same investment for the next year's stretch don't care about those KPIs, or those KPIs or those things that you've built don't necessarily impact into the particular areas where you want to go, that's not going to do anything. So I think starting really early, thinking about the why, thinking about the why does our product need a community? Because I think a lot of people have registered that it does. I think there's a growing awareness, and obviously my knowledge of the Indian market, I defer entirely to others on the call, but in general, globally, I think there's been a realization that if you want to be a serious growth company these days, you're going to need to have some kind of community around it. But why that is the case, I think, is very poorly understood, certainly at a certain level and in certain markets. So I think trying to get people to nail down very early what it is that they're trying to get out of that community, and then you can build from there. We've got some very good questions in the chat going. Sorry, go ahead, Anush.
Yeah, I think sort of two follow points. I think one, I definitely sort of resonated when you said the word community product manager. I think that's also something like we as a business at LikeMinds, where we want to work with companies who are seriously considering community as a main community as a product, as a main way to grow. That's one of the very strong signal that we pick. Do they have if not a dedicated community product manager, but a product manager who is ready to pick that role? So I would definitely sort of like, if I have to add one person in the hiring plan, Anuj, on the original question, I would want if at least 40% of one product manager in that. The other thing which I wanted to comment about was, because Michael, you've talked a lot about feedback around the product. I feel it's a very, very useful thing. It's a very, very strong way to build any product, like forget just community as a product. But I want the people here to also be clear about the fact that there is a difference between community of product and community as a product. So the communities that are built around, let's say, an existing product, where the key focus is, for example, Apple creating a community for their fans, or any brand, for example, may want most of the discussions focused around the services that they offer. I feel that is more like a community of product, whereas community as a product is a larger category, where you start offering community as a value to your existing customers or users, as an additional value, wherever there is a peer-to-peer value addition that can be done. So for example, in our case at Curofy, which was a doctor-to-doctor community, case discussion, being able to do those discussions with their peers was a very strong value that they got. So they would not talk about, let's say, the directory services that we offered, or learning with pharma companies. That was not the community. It was not a community of product. It was a community of practice. So a lot of times you might sort of get a sense of false awareness that community as a product should only be used as community of product. I feel it should be fundamentally done through a problem being solved. If the problem is very, very focused around the problem that your existing product solves or your existing services solve, maybe it can be a community of product. But if you want to solve a problem which is maybe peripheral or it's different from what your core product or services is solving for, it should not be a community of product. It should be some community of interest or community of practice.
I guess I somewhat agree with both the points which you guys mentioned, and I resonate because I face a lot of issues when working with the product team, and eventually I feel now that I am 50% product, 50% community, because I'm involved in the sprints, product mapping, feedback cycles, and I'm playing some role where different other applications as well. My community is being involved. Okay, this is gonna be next, and involved in tech sprints. So I feel that. And when it comes to the feedback, I completely agree with Michael, because when I was working in Savo Labs, which was a SaaS company, and eventually community played a very crucial role there. The feedback cycle, 50% of the crucial feedback used to come from the communities. We had a feedback funnel which we made, and eventually, occasionally we used to do roundtables with our super members or super users in public, like a specific roundtable where people are attending, just to give that sense of belonging to the community, that okay, Michael gave this feedback, this has been implemented, and it would be live next week. So we used to get more feedbacks on this. Coming to my next question, Nipun, you mentioned about how to decide on Nipun. I guess Nipun dropped. No worries. I guess Michael, you can take this question.
Sure.
So Nipun was talking about community of interest and community of product, and like how to decide and pitch in. So I'm asking this question from a startup point of view. I guess big brands, the primary objective is business branding, and then the community comes in play, and it's a good to have thing for brands. That's something which I personally feel right now as well. But talking from a startup point of view, when just imagine that you being a founder, or a CTO, CMO, when is the right time to start the community? Is it when you are working on the product, or like later stages where the product has been made, and it's when we're gonna need for adoptions and acquisitions? So
Sure.
when is the right time to initiate the community?
So to me, I think it's both a very good and a very bad question. And hear me out here, because I swear it's not as insulting as it might sound. So I think it's tempting to think about community, and it's often useful to think about community as a thing that you start when you sign up for your web domain, where you're going to put your question and answers and something like that. But I think this is a too narrow view. And the reason I think it's a very good question is because I think it's important that the answer is understood, and that answer is always immediately. So when you first start your offering your new product or engaging your new business, when you have your first conversations, even if they're with people that you might be starting it up with, you haven't even got to the stage of investors or users or anything like that, you have already started the community that will exist around that product. And one element of that community is going to be events. Maybe one element of that community is going to be how you host that online, how you have question and answers and things like that. But the community around your product or your business venture is, to a certain extent, is everybody involved. It's going to be how you start talking about it and when people start getting involved. I think the question is obviously around when do you formalize that community. But I think the way that you have a really successful formalization of that community into however you want to run it, into a local group or a asynchronous online community or something like that, the way that you formalize that should be informed by the fact that at every step, as you've been going along, you've been thinking about, okay, we're creating this product just as you would be creating a community to solve some user pain point. We're trying to meet some need. And then who are the types of people who are going to have that need? Who are the types of people who are going to be experiencing this pain point? Who are the kinds of people that are going to be part of our user base? And when you start conceptualizing your entire user base as at least potential members of your community, then I think you put yourself in a much stronger position to then hit the ground running, because you've already been having thoughts about, okay, well, these are the kind of people that fall in our user base and exist in our ecosystem, in our community. How, which of their needs can we meet better by then formalizing? So that moment of choosing to formalize it is going to be when you actually do that bit, to start actually answering the question that you tried to ask rather than the one I wanted to talk about. But the moment you would actually do that is when you, partly when you just have the funding to do so and the time. Because obviously when you're starting off, budget's going to be very tight. You're going to be very short on time. When you want to formalize it, I think, is when you start to have conversations that it essentially becomes more efficient to do it that way, basically. So one thing is when you're starting off early, you might have a lot of questions coming to you through WhatsApp, or you might be doing a lot of communication through Slack, or somebody's mentioned Discord, for example. And that can be really good early when you have the number of people required and the number of time required and a low enough question volume that's going to be sustainable. And there's going to come a tipping point, and this will be different for every business, where you hit that point where you have to scale your ability to have those conversations. Because there is no successful product, I submit anyway. I'm not, it sounds like I'm laying down the law, but I think this is the case. There is no successful product which can have a small enough question volume and a small enough level of conversations that they can happen effectively in those one-to-one or one-to-group short-term sessions. And I know Claudius may smile at this, but the word I use is durable. The conversations that you have on more formalized online communities are durable. The answers are long-term. So when you get to that point where you have you have a clear business need to be able to answer the same question many, many times, or to enable these conversations at a larger scale, that's going to be the moment where you need to be launching a community, I think. And in that case, the pain point that you're solving will be different, because you'll have, I may have dropped. Am I still being heard? It seems I might be.
Yes, we can.
I am. Good. Sorry about that. Was unsure if that was my end or yours on the internet. That's going to be the moment, I think, where we need to be then suddenly making that shift. I'd love to speak to a couple of the questions in chat at the moment while Nipun's coming back. Cool. I think Nipun is in the process of reconnecting.
Hi guys.
Hey, excellent.
I'm really sorry. My battery broke. I don't know what's the...
Oh, bad luck.
So, Nipun, you figure out your system. Meanwhile, I guess I would like Nipun to answer Sachin's question, because you have been generating some content and you have a lot of plans for the upcoming year with Community Herd. Meanwhile, Michael, if you can take on Rashmi's question.
Yeah, sure.
Because of another meeting, but eventually, it would be going as according to her. So
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Even I face this issue. Reason being, if I talk about specifically Discord, there are a few bots will have an additional layer. When people are joining, you can do your verification. We can collect the details, but eventually that adds another layer of community members onboarding process, which I feel leads to drop of members. So for instance, 1,000 people came, but because of that verification process, like 50% will drop off. Wherein if we have our own products, sign in with Google, Apple ID, Yahoo, that's pretty simple. So yeah, if you can take it on.
Yeah, I think I've done this a few times, but I want to go back a step from this question, basically, which is that if you have a community that's mainly centered around activation on Discord, there needs to be a really good reason for that. Basically, I think is one thing that I would like to say, because the difficulty of Discord, and Discord shares a lot of this with Slack, is that it's very transitory. The kind of information that gets shared there is going to it disappears up into the thread, up into the the channel or the thread, or depending on which nomenclature changes depending on which you're using, but it disappears up very, very quickly. And so it's only a suitable place to be building a community, I think, if you have a very particular use case and a very particular thing you're trying to solve for, which means you want that kind of transitory conversation. And I'm certainly not saying that doesn't exist. I think there's lots of examples where that can be really useful. But I think it's worth trying to think about whether that's the right place to try and build. So then if you are going to be building on Discord, as Anuj mentions, there's some great ways that you can collect user data. There's some great ways that you can have people being able to self-identify in terms of what level of notification they want to get, for example. One of the things I've found around Discord is that if somebody is engaging on Discord, they're very likely to want to stay there, I think. And so if you can find ways that you can have those interactions happening either in a subsection of the Discord that you're already engaging with, where you can have the ability to notify people. For those who aren't familiar necessarily, Discord has a pretty complex permissioning system, which can allow you to give people all kinds of roles very dynamically. And if you run that well, you're going to be able to make sure you are notifying the right people in the right circumstance. You can also potentially spin out something into a Discord that you've then set up. It's going to be extremely difficult to have this kind of reactivation happening in a Discord that you don't have sufficient control over, I think. And so having spun that out into your own is obviously gives you that freedom to create and to build and to have the right kind of settings there. I think one of the difficulties there will be if your end goal is I want to have people engaging with my email mailing list, for example, you're going to really struggle to build that through Discord, simply because Discord can have this all-consuming nature to it. You can do a huge portion of the engagement that you want to do, to the total engagement that you want to do on Discord. Meaning, if you have a few things that you could be engaging with, 3 of them are on Discord and one of them is asking you to remove yourself from Discord and then go to email, it's going to be challenging because Discord is very sticky in terms of the way that people want to engage with it. I don't know if Nipun has another idea, but those are my thoughts on Discord.
Yeah, I think what I would say is generally what I've seen is when you're building on any third-party platform, like whether it's Discord, Slack, WhatsApp, Facebook, you are sort of renting a space in someone else's platform, right? So you are sort of going there because you are finding easier ways to acquire new community members potentially. And also those platforms will guarantee you let's say in case of WhatsApp, it will guarantee you a daily active user in your community, like, and maybe Slack also. But what that also defeats is, what's being discussed there is guided by the rules that those platforms have created over, let's say, a decade now, or so people come there for specific purposes, like what Michael also said, right? People use Discord for probably burst of conversations at some point, which works well for gaming, and maybe it will not work for a devs kind of community. Maybe Slack will work better because people come to Slack for having professional conversations, and their mindset is centered around professional conversations when they use Slack. So whenever you're using a third party platform, I think it's very important to study the profile of users and their mindset when they are using that platform, and then build community programs and community use cases with that as the core sort of user persona when you are creating a program on a third party platform. So for example, for again Indian context, a lot of people create cohort based communities on Slack, like EdTech runs on when it's a professional kind of thing, it runs on Slack. If it's a women focused or a mobile first audience focused, at least in India, I feel bad to say that, but women focused communities are still WhatsApp heavy because people don't have access to laptop as much as they have to mobile. So if your audience is let's say a women who is in a tier 2 city in India or a tier 3 city in India, she uses WhatsApp for, let's say, consuming forwards depending on what's her age is. And so you need to think of those things when you're seeding your community. And most often, what I've concluded from my understanding of different communities and different community platforms is, when you're building on third party, you're renting space. So it's good to start a GTM sort of focused community on those platforms. When you're learning what are the problems, when you're validating what are the problems, or when your community life cycle, the value that you're offering as a community is limited. It's not, let's say, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. Let's say if it's a cohort based course, and the major focus of delivering value via community as a product is for, let's say, those 3 months when you're running that cohort, and you're not planning to engage maybe deeply with the alumni, it's okay to run on Slack or Discord, because people like those platforms will give you a daily active user at least, right? Which is also very important. When you're creating different behavior, you train your members. It becomes easier to train your members when they are already using that platform. But if you're thinking of a long-term community program or initiative or use case, it's always better to consider, either going beyond one community platform and parallelly create your own assets like email and, maybe certain event tools like Bevy. Or if you want to go really deep, when you have that buy-in from the management, that the management is ready to invest into building a custom technology to solve certain problems, I think that's the time you need to sort of think your community as a product that you want to own, and you want to modify the product as you want. And that's when you should think of probably either integrating community as a product in your existing product, or maybe use a white labeled community platform which offers enough customizations as the use cases that you're looking for, they are getting fulfilled.
I think that makes a lot of sense, but I need Nipun to speak to Sakin's question around AI generated content and how you should handle that on a community.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I have a follow-up question for Nipun to what you mentioned right now and Rashmi's question. So, for instance, like let's have a scenario-based question. I have my management's buy-in for the community, and there's a company called XYZ, who provides platform as a service for community, which can be, customized UI, UX, theme, and everything, entire customizable. We took it, and we're running community for years, 4-5 years down the lane. We have lakhs of members on it, and eventually the problem of engagement on third-party application has been solved because it has been there for 5 years. Now, if something happens and the company has to stop their services, how that's going to impact the community, how that's going to impact, because that has been integrated in app, right? So technically it's more like a part of our existing application, part of a product. And even if we have the entire data on a backup, replicating a similar platform, because 1 lakh members have experienced, the UI UX. What's your take on it? I know there's no definite question in this, but it's just I want to know what's your take on it.
I think I can give you a very specific answer, and then I'll substantiate it. I know which vendor is being talked about. We have recently helped migrate one client from that vendor to us. So that's the specific answer. But a generic answer is, I think in general, whenever you are investing into building community as a product which you want to customize on your own, you really need to think long term. You really need to think whichever vendor you are choosing, what is the fail safe that you have? Is there a minimum notice period? I don't know what's the reason for the fallout. And you need to also sort of build that rapport with the vendor as well, build that comfort, maybe take feedback from their existing clients. So it's a very, very important decision, right? Like you are relying on the vendor. So I think I suggested you as well earlier, there should be a legal way for you to lock in, the results or the timelines that are being sort of committed, right? So that's my broader answer here. I think if the management is still aligned, see, sometimes people are doing it for experiment. sometimes people are sure that this will have to be done. So think of it like a wrong hire. A lot of times when we are building a community or any product, we hire someone with high expectations, we invest in them, we train them, and then they leave for whatever reason in 2 months, 3 months. But that doesn't deter you to, like not build the product. You still build the product out. So if the management is really aligned, take that, like you are 2 3 months back, but that's fine. Like if from a long term horizon, 2 year 3 year horizon, it will not matter.
Cool. That answers my question. Now, coming back to Sachin's question, you can see it in the chat. I want to give it a touch of our current ongoing discussion. So, Nipun, I want you to answer this from a point. Just give me a second. I'm really.
Yeah.
No, that's quite all right. I think
working from home is sort of comes with a lot of responsibilities around taking e-commerce deliveries.
It has ups and downs. It has ups and downs.
I'm back. I'm really sorry. I'm the only one at the flat. So coming back. So Nipun, I want you to answer that question from a point where I'm talking more about a content generating community or a content community. Like Pocket FM or Leher. Where the application is the community, they're generating content, and that's their services. How the AI is going to impact the product and the community. So I want to give that touch.
Sure. I actually one of the companies that you mentioned, I was meeting one of their content head last month, like 2 3, when I was in Bombay, Anuj, when we met. They are actually using AI to create content. So what lot of these content heavy companies that you talked about, one of the raw material for their business is how much content they can create, right? Think of, let's say, a Netflix also, and these are easier to create. Like Netflix is very visually heavy, but let's say for an audio platform, they are very like the material in the content is very important. Maybe the acting will not matter a lot. And then there is voice artists. So voice, for example, can be done through AI. Content, part of it can be done through AI. So my view on this is we should think of, see, AI is your assistant. Like fundamentally, it's an assistant. If you know what is to be done, and if you can train that AI, it's like a very generalist assistant. You will need to train that AI, and if you can do that thing well, there is this science that is being evolving, which is called prompt engineering, right? So if you can prompt the AI well, when you know your requirements, I think it can help you create a lot of content. So content creation, I'm very sure, is a fairly solved use case. Maybe not creative content as much, but there, if you are good at prompt engineering, you can actually be creative in your prompts and get the AI to generate creative content for you. Uh, so that's my take on content creation for sure. There are a lot of other use cases which can be sort of like moderation is a very interesting AI-led use case that can be sort of implemented in community. You can triage spam content. You can, maybe sort of motivate your members to not share, spam content or spam images, or let's say, images that may be harmful for your users. In a lot of cases, it's not humanly possible to do moderate at scale, which is where AI would help a lot. So yeah, this is what I feel. Yeah.
This also applies to how you identify it. I think the obviously the large language model stuff that we've seen recently is the kind of trendy topic in AI, but the bot generated content has been a thing that we have been needing to identify and screen for a very long time. And fundamentally, the only way that AI generated large language model generated content is likely to be successfully identified at scale is essentially with a large language AI, which is obviously what Nipun is partly touching on here, which is, I mean, not that challenging, I think, at the moment. One of the things working for us as community builders is the fact that any advancement in the tools that allow people to create AI generated content at exactly the same moment allows us to detect it in essentially the same way. You know, this is an arms race where the dealer is working for both sides. Basically, we're able to have the same tools that we can integrate. Now, the difficulty, of course, may come in depending on where you're implementing your community, whether you can actually leverage those AI tools to detect the content and how effectively you can screen it. To touch Discord, ironically, is an area where you can do this very easily. There are already large language Discord AI bots which will moderate to eliminate content that has been generated that way. I think it becomes much more challenging when you're looking at, we want to allow some AI generated content in our community, but not others. That's when it starts to get very challenging, because if you're trying to say, we don't want to restrict the ways in which our users use AI as an assistant, which is a perfect way of putting it. Thank you, Nipun. That's a very, very good way of thinking about it. We don't want to limit the kind of tools that our users use, but obviously then you have the malicious actors and how you differentiate between the two. And that's partly going to be a kind of age-old moderation question in terms of you can how heavily you crack down on stuff. You're always going to be affecting some genuine content, and how strict you want to be is going to be a decision about how much you care about the false positives versus the false negatives.
And also, speaking from a community manager point of view, I'm not sure about the Western culture, but in India, like most of the brands has community as good to have. And we always get shared resources, like a shared graphic designer or content writer, and eventually I guess AI plays a very good role in helping us get things done faster, because sometimes we are planning something for tonight, but eventually that's going to get delayed because of the graphic designers, content writers, or people who are going to take care of the SEO, SEMs and stuff. So I'm using AI a lot, by the way. For everything I'm using AI, and I just send it for approval. Hey, just check it and finalize it. So I guess that's the end of the session, guys. Thanks, guys. Anyone? Any questions? Sangeeta, Sachin, Bhavik, Claudius, Akash, Akshita. Anyone?
Not a question. I had an addition to what was just discussed.
Please.
I think just to Michael's point, how you position and how you label AI content largely depends on the nature of the community. If in the community people come together to meet other humans, there's a different aspect to AI content flying under the radar for too long, and eventually there's a meetup and you discover, oh, this user is actually only pushing AI generated content. Whereas if you have a community of practice where people are looking for inspiration, new handicraft ideas or something like that, it's totally fine, I think, to push AI content. So you really need to think AI integration through from the CX experience and from what is the kind of community experience that you're creating there.
Cool. That's a great add-on. So I guess this marks the end of the session. First, thanks to everyone for coming. This is my first CMX Mumbai event. Eventually, there's a lot planned for the upcoming months, offline, online, both, and it means a lot for me. Everyone took out time on a weekend coming, especially Michael and Nipun. I guess I've been behind them here. Let's do a session, especially when Michael was sick. So that's something. I'm really sorry for that, Michael. And so I guess it's time for the picture, probably. And guys, I'll try to get the newsletter, blog, and the podcast get as soon as possible. I'll try my best. It's just that it's a one-man team right now because we are just starting. Soon as we have team, everything will be streamlined. So I request everyone to turn on the cameras. I guess Sangeeta left because of it. So, Vineet, Sachin, Akash. Sangeeta, can you turn on your camera? I guess we can say Mumbai, everyone. Akash?
Mumbai.
So, ready? 3, 2, 1, Mumbai.
Mumbai.
Cool, yeah. Thanks everyone for joining in. Hope you guys have a good day and good evening ahead.
Fantastic.
Cool. Thanks
Thanks very much.
everyone.